Jed Callahan knew he should have kept riding, and that was exactly why he didn't. The wind on the Wyoming plain pushed at his hat and hissed through the grass like a warning, but the sound that stopped him wasn't the wind. It was a faint, uneven breath coming from an abandoned barn that everyone in the county pretended not to see. He reined his horse in and stared at the slumped shape of the building. The boards were sun-bleached and split. The roof bowed like a tired back. A place like that didn't hold anything good. Jed told himself it was none of his business, the same way he told himself that years ago, when trouble wore a clean smile and asked for silence. That memory tightened in his chest, like a knot pulled too hard. Blue, his horse, tossed its head and shifted sideways. Jed slid down from the saddle, boots crunching on frozen dirt. He moved slow, listening. Another breath. Then a small sound, like someone trying not to make one at all. "Hello?" he called, keeping his voice low. He didn't want to spook whoever was inside. He also didn't want to announce himself to the wrong kind of ears. The barn swallowed his words. Dust floated in thin beams of light. The air smelled of old hay and cold wood, and underneath it, something sharp and wrong. Jed stepped around a collapsed stall gate and saw her. She lay on the hard ground, half covered by a torn blanket, wrists tied, shoulders drawn tight, as if she was bracing for another blow that hadn't come yet. Her face was bruised, her lips cracked, and her eyes were open but unfocused, like she'd been forced to stare at the dark for too long. When Jed crouched, she flinched away from him, the movement fast and desperate. Then she froze, as if freezing had ever kept anyone safe. "It's all right," Jed said, though he didn't believe in all right the way he used to. "I'm not here to hurt you." Her gaze flicked to his hands. She watched them the way a cornered animal watches a gate, measuring distance, weighing chances. Jed kept his palms open and still, letting silence do the work his words couldn't. "I'm Jed," he added. "Jed Callahan. You can look at me. I won't rush you." Her throat worked. No sound came out. She tried again, and this time there was a whisper of air, a word that didn't form. Jed leaned closer, careful. "Can you tell me your name?" Her eyes finally found his. There was fear there, yes, but something else too. Stubbornness, buried under pain like a coal under ash. Her lips moved. "Annabelle," she managed, the syllables brittle. "Annabelle Holt." Jed's stomach turned with a quiet, cold anger. Not because she was hurt, because of the message someone had tried to leave on her. On the side of her neck, just above her collar, letters had been cut into the skin in a crude, deliberate line. A name. Not a prayer. Not a plea. A warning. Mason Graves. Jed didn't say it out loud. Saying it felt like inviting it closer. Everyone in Wyoming knew the name, even if most folks only spoke it behind closed doors. Graves owned land, lawmen, and patience. He didn't have to raise his voice to make people obey. Jed's first instinct was the old one. Back away. Ride home. Tell himself a stronger man would handle it. That instinct tasted like rust in his mouth. He remembered the last time he'd stepped aside. The last time he'd chosen quiet because quiet seemed safer. He remembered the cost of that choice, and the way regret never stayed buried. Annabelle's breathing hitched. Her eyes begged him not to leave, but she didn't say it. Pride held her lips shut. Jed reached for the rope with slow fingers. "This is going to sting a little," he said. "I'm sorry." He worked the knot loose and eased her hands free. Her wrists were raw. She didn't cry out. She just swallowed the pain like she'd been practicing. "I can't walk," she whispered. "Then you won't," Jed said, and surprised himself with how steady his voice sounded. He slid his arm behind her shoulders and lifted carefully, feeling how light she was, how little strength she had left. She tensed at the contact. Then, after a long second, she let herself lean against him, as if borrowing his balance was the last thing she wanted, but the only thing she could accept. Outside, The wind hit them hard. Jed shielded her with his coat as best he could and carried her to his horse. He didn't look back at the barn. He didn't need to. The warning had already been delivered. As he set Annabelle in the saddle and swung up behind her, fear tried to speak first. It told him Graves would come. It told him this would ruin what little peace he had left. Jed tightened his hold and answered fear with the only thing he hadn't done before. He turned toward the distant line of the Callahan Ranch and rode, not fast enough to panic her, but fast enough to mean it. The first night at the Callahan Ranch passed in short, uneven stretches. Jed kept the lamp low and the cabin warm, feeding the stove until the iron hummed. Annabelle lay on the narrow bed near the hearth, wrapped in clean quilts, her face turned toward the wall like she was afraid of what she might see if she looked straight ahead. When Jed offered water, she took it with both hands, careful and quiet, as if any sudden movement might bring someone through the door. By morning, the storm wind had eased, but the feeling in the cabin had not. Jed moved through his own home like a guest. He washed cloths in a basin, laid out salve, and kept his voice steady even when his thoughts were not. He had done hard work all his life, but this felt different. Fixing fence was simple. This was not. Annabelle slept and woke and slept again. Each time she surfaced, her eyes searched the room in quick checks, window, door, corners, until she remembered where she was. She did not ask questions right away. She watched Jed instead, measuring him the way she had measured his hands in the barn. On the second day, she managed to sit up. The movement cost her, and her breath caught, but she did not complain. Jed set a bowl of broth on a chair beside the bed. "You don't have to force it," he said. "I'm not forcing anything," she replied. Her voice was still rough, but the words were clear. He nodded and stepped back, giving her space. Outside, the ranch was quiet. The sky was pale, the grass stiff with cold. Jed had lived alone long enough that silence felt normal. Now it felt like something listening. That afternoon, when Annabelle had eaten a few spoons and kept them down, she finally spoke without being asked. "You saw the name," she said. Jed's jaw tightened. "I did." Her fingers pulled at the edge of the quilt. He wanted it seen. That's the point. Jed leaned against the table, arms crossed, trying to look calm. Inside, he felt the old pull to shut the door on trouble and pretend it wasn't there. He hated that part of himself, but it was familiar. Annabelle's eyes stayed on him. "People don't do that for money," she said. "They do it to make sure everyone stays quiet." Jed did not answer right away. The cabin creaked as the stove settled. The empty chair by the window caught his eye, and with it came Lorna's voice from years ago, plain and steady. "Don't look away. Don't let fear pick for you." He swallowed. "Why did you go after him?" he asked. "If you knew what he was." Annabelle took a slow breath. "I didn't start with him," she said. "I started with paper, deeds, records, little changes that didn't make sense. A boundary line moved here, a name replaced there. Folks losing land they'd held for years, and being told it was legal." She paused, as if choosing each word. It wasn't. It was made to look that way. Jed's hands flexed at his sides. He knew those kinds of tricks. He'd heard of them. He'd told himself they were not his problem. "I found copies," Annabelle went on. "I found signatures that didn't match. I found payments that didn't belong. The deeper I looked, the more it pointed back to Mason Graves. Not just him as a man, but him as a force. People doing favors, people looking the other way, people getting paid to stay polite." Jed gave a humorless exhale. "Polite," he repeated, like it tasted bitter. Annabelle's gaze sharpened. "You've met him." Jed stared at the floorboards. A memory rose up that he'd tried to bury. Graves on a porch in town, smiling like a church leader, voice soft as cotton. "Jed," he'd said, "you're a sensible man. Keep your ranch. Keep your peace. You don't want to get mixed up in things that don't concern you. The words had sounded like advice. The meaning had been something else. Jed looked back at Annabelle. I did meet him, he admitted. And I chose the easy road. I told myself it was smart. I told myself I was protecting my family. His throat tightened on the last word. My wife didn't call it smart. She called it fear. Annabelle didn't push. She simply watched him, and in that look there was no rescue story waiting to happen. There was only a question. What kind of person would he be now? Jed nodded once, as if answering something inside himself. I won't ask you to run, he said. And I won't pretend I can fix what happened. But I can stop turning away. Annabelle's shoulders eased by a small degree. Not trust yet, but something close to it. That's all I'm asking for, she said. One person who doesn't look down at the ground. Jed stepped to the window and scanned the open land, the long fence line, the empty road that could carry anyone. He kept his face calm, because calm was useful. But inside, his fear was waking up, and he knew it would not stay quiet for long. The packet of documents felt small under Jed Callahan's arm, but it might as well have been a branded sign. He and Annabelle Holt walked side by side through Cheyenne, keeping their pace steady, their faces plain, as if they were only in town for supplies and a hot cup of coffee. Annabelle kept her collar high and her eyes moving. Jed kept his shoulders loose, acting like a man with nothing to lose, even though his mind was tight with fear. Inside the post office, the clerk avoided looking at them for long. Annabelle gave a false name and a box number that matched the instructions she had memorized. The clerk disappeared into the back, and the wait stretched too long. Jed watched the door and listened to the soft shuffle of boots on wood. He told himself they were fine. He had told himself that before, too. When the clerk returned, he set a brown-wrapped bundle on the counter as if it carried trouble. Annabelle signed with a hand that shook once, then steadied. She did not look at the clerk's face again. She took the packet, and they left without hurry. Outside, the light was fading. A few families crossed the street, laughing, carrying small bags of goods, and for a moment Annabelle's expression changed. She stared at a mother guiding a child by the hand, and her breath caught. Jed saw it, and understood that her fight was not only about land and papers. It was about a life that should have been ordinary, and was not. You're thinking about running, Jed said quietly, not as an order, but as a concern. Annabelle swallowed. I'm thinking about what it costs, she answered. To stay, to leave, either way. Before Jed could respond, a smooth voice slid in behind them. Mr. Callahan, that is you, isn't it? Jed stopped. He turned slowly, already knowing the name that would fit the voice. Ree Tolbert stepped out from the edge of a storefront, dressed neat, smiling like a man offering help. Two other men lingered nearby, hands relaxed, eyes sharp. Tolbert tipped his hat at Annabelle as if she were a guest at a polite gathering. Ma'am, he said, I hope you're feeling better today. Annabelle's jaw tightened. Move, she said. Tolbert's smile stayed in place. I'd like to, he replied gently. But Mr. Graves dislikes confusion. Papers go missing, stories start moving around, and good people get nervous. We're here to keep things calm. Jed felt the old urge rise in him, the one that told him to hand it over and walk away. He remembered Lorna's voice from years ago, steady and tired at the same time. Don't trade your spine for quiet. He had traded it once, and the shame had never left. He stepped closer to Annabelle, not in front of her, but beside her. We're leaving, he told Tolbert. Step aside. Tolbert's eyes cooled, though his tone stayed friendly. I can't do that. Not today. Just give me the packet, and you can both go on like none of this happened. Jed angled Annabelle toward a side street. They moved, not running, but not slow. Tolbert's men followed with quiet confidence. The moment Jed turned into a narrow alley, he knew they had been guided there. One man came at Jed fast. Jed shoved him back, trying to create space without making it worse. Another closed in from the side. Jed's boot slipped on loose dirt, and his shoulder hit the brick wall. He heard Annabelle draw a sharp breath behind him. Tolbert stayed a few steps away, voice calm. "You don't have to prove anything," he said to Jed, almost kind. "You can still be the sensible man I remember." Jed pushed up, dazed, and saw the second man raise his arm toward him. In that instant, Annabelle's face went still, like she had reached a hard line inside herself. She had been a warning in a barn. She refused to be one again. She drew the small revolver Jed had insisted she carry, hands firm despite the tremble in her wrist. "Stop," she said, clear and level. The man did not stop. Annabelle fired once. The sound cracked through the alley. The man dropped and did not rise. Everything froze for a beat, like the city itself had taken a breath. Annabelle stared at what she had done, shock spreading across her face, then something darker settling behind it. Not pride, not relief. Decision. Tolbert's polite mask slipped for the first time. He stared at her, then smiled again, thinner now. "Well," he said softly, "now you're part of it." Jed grabbed the packet, grabbed Annabelle's arm gently, and pulled her forward. "We go," he said. Annabelle nodded once, swallowing hard, and followed, no longer just surviving, but choosing what came next. A line of riders appeared at the far end of the road, moving at an easy pace as if they were coming to pay a friendly visit. Jed Callahan saw them from the yard and felt his stomach tighten. The dogs barked hard, then circled close to the porch, sensing what Jed already knew. This was not a neighbor. This was a claim being made. Annabelle Holt stood in the cabin doorway with her coat on and her hair pinned back. She had healed enough to move without wobbling, but her eyes still carried the memory of the barn. When she saw the lead rider, her face went still. "That's him," she said. Mason Graves rode up to the gate and stopped like the ranch already belonged to him. He wore clean clothes and a calm smile, the kind that could fool strangers. Two men stayed behind him, quiet and watchful. Graves looked from Jed to Annabelle as if he was counting tools on a shelf. "Jed," Graves called, voice warm. "I was hoping you'd show good sense like you used to." Jed did not answer. He stayed in the open, not giving Graves the porch and not giving him the cabin. Annabelle stepped beside him, not behind. Jed noticed that choice. He respected it. Graves's eyes rested on Annabelle's face. "Ma'am," he said politely, "you've had a rough spell. Folks get confused when they're tired and hurt. I'm here to straighten things out. No need for any more stress." Annabelle's hands clenched once, then relaxed. Her voice stayed steady. "You're not here to help," she said. "You're here to take." Graves sighed as if she had disappointed him. "I'm here to protect order," he replied, still calm. "Those papers you picked up in Cheyenne are not yours. Give them back, and you can both go on living quiet lives." Jed felt the old fear press at him, the same fear that had once made him step aside. He heard his late wife's words in his head, clear as day. "If you keep choosing comfort, you'll end up with nothing worth keeping." Jed lifted his chin. "No," he said. "You don't get to decide what happens here anymore." Graves's smile tightened. "I'm trying to be reasonable," he said. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." The two men behind Graves shifted in their saddles. Jed saw the movement and knew what it meant. He reached for the rifle he'd kept close, not raised, but ready. Annabelle's hand went to her own weapon, and Jed caught the way she breathed through the fear, forcing herself to stay present. Graves nodded once, like he had expected this. "All right," he said, voice still polite. "Then we'll do it the rough way." Everything happened fast after that. One of Graves's men pushed the gate open and started forward. Jed fired a warning shot into the dirt near the horse's hooves, stopping him short. The other man circled wide, trying to get a clear line to the cabin. Annabelle moved with Jed, covering the angle Jed couldn't see. Graves did not flinch. He stayed in the middle, watching, calm as ever. "You're making a poor choice," he called. "You think you're brave. You're just tired." Annabelle spoke without raising her voice. "I'm done being tired," she said. The man circling the cabin rushed in close. Annabelle stepped out and forced him back, her aim steady. Jed drove the other man away from the gate, pushing him into open ground where he had less cover. In the chaos, Graves finally moved, riding in as if he could end it with his presence alone. Jed and Annabelle turned as one. Graves's calm slipped for a second, replaced by surprise that they did not break. The fight closed tight in the yard, dust and shouts and hard choices. When it ended, Graves was down in the dirt, his clean coat ruined, his power gone with him. Jed stood over the silence, breathing hard. Annabelle lowered her weapon slowly, not celebrating, not relieved, only steady. The danger was not over in the world beyond the ranch, but the terror that had followed her to this porch had finally been stopped. Dawn came in pale and cold, and Annabelle Holt sat at Jed Callahan's kitchen table as if she were guarding something fragile. The tin box rested between her hands. Inside were the documents that had nearly gotten them both swallowed by Graves's reach. Jed moved quietly around the cabin, making coffee, checking the door latch, listening to the ranch settle into morning. The danger felt distant, but not gone, like thunder that could still roll back. Annabelle looked up. "I'm taking them in today," she said. Jed nodded once. "I figured you would." She opened the tin box and smoothed the papers on the table, careful with the corners as if they were more than paper. "These aren't just deeds," she said. "They're proof. And proof only matters if someone sees it." Jed leaned against the counter, holding his cup but not drinking. "You don't owe anyone a fight," he said. "After what you've been through, you could leave and never look back." Annabelle's mouth tightened, then relaxed. "If I leave," she answered, "it teaches them it worked." Before midday, 2 federal marshals rode into the yard. They didn't act like heroes. They looked tired, alert, and careful, the way men look when they know power can hide in plain sight. One introduced himself as Marshal Klein, the other as Marshal Reddick. Jed stayed close, not speaking for Annabelle, but ready if things turned wrong. Klein removed his gloves and glanced at the cabin, then at Annabelle. "We heard you have documents connected to Mason Graves," he said. His tone was calm, but his eyes measured every detail. Annabelle didn't flinch. "I do," she replied. She carried the tin box inside and set it on the table. When she laid the papers out, the marshals leaned in and began reading, their faces growing tighter with each page. Jed watched their expressions change from skepticism to something heavier. Reddick tapped a sheet with a finger. "These signatures don't match," he murmured. "And these transfers, they're stacked. Same pattern over and over." Annabelle kept her voice steady. "That's the system," she said. "Not one bad decision. A whole chain of them." Klein carefully gathered the pages. "A judge needs to see this," he said. "Judge Mathers is in town today. We can bring you in now." The ride to town was quiet. Annabelle sat straight in the saddle, her gaze fixed ahead. Jed rode beside her, watching the road and the open land, aware that even after Graves was gone, his influence could still linger in people who had benefited from keeping quiet. In the courthouse, Judge Mathers listened without rushing. He was an older man with clear eyes and a plain voice. Annabelle placed the papers on his desk and spoke simply. "These deeds were forged. These transfers were theft dressed up as law. These payments tie it together." Mathers read, then looked up. "If this holds," he said, "it reaches beyond one ranch. It reaches into offices, banks, and names people respect." Annabelle met his gaze. "Then make them face it," she said. Mathers nodded once. "We will," he replied. "This will be handled in the open. No favors, no quiet deals." Outside, Marshal Klein stopped Annabelle near the courthouse steps. "There's something else," he said. "You could leave. We can help you start over somewhere far from here. A safer place." Annabelle's eyes drifted toward the street, where ordinary people passed with ordinary concerns. For a moment, Jed saw the weight in her expression, the pull of wanting peace. Then she looked back at the road that led home. "I'm done running," she said. "If I go, I stay a warning. If I stay, I become a choice." That evening, back at the ranch, the air felt different. Not perfect, not soft, but honest. Jed stood with Annabelle on the porch while the sun slid behind the open fields. "You could have taken the clean start," Jed said. Annabelle nodded. "I thought about it," she admitted. "Then I remembered what it costs to look away." Jed didn't argue. He simply said, "You belong here if you want to." Annabelle exhaled slowly, like she was letting go of a long-held breath. "I want to build," she said. "Not because it's easy, because it's real." The porch boards creaked under their boots, and the wind moved through the grass like a steady promise. Somewhere beyond the fence line, the world was still full of men who counted on silence. But on this ranch, silence had finally been replaced by something stronger. And if this story stays with you, pass it on, because the moment one person decides not to look away is often the moment others find the courage to stand too.